Growing up, at Christmas time, we would take turns going around opening one present at a time. Of course, this was after we'd had the meal, and all the dishes had to be cleaned and put away, the dessert eaten, the coffee ready, and then we could sit around and go one by one, opening our gifts. It was torture. It was torture, absolute torture. My older cousins think that we got it easy because after a while that tradition went away. But when they were young, it was always worse then. But we would sit around, and of course you'd open and say thank you to whomever. And then, while everyone else was going around, you'd try to open your toy and get it ready and going so you could play while you waited for everyone else. This one particular time I recall I had some toy or another that needed batteries in it. Much like my microphone, which the batteries ran out. Sorry, I'll switch them here. But I had a toy that needed some batteries, and the little case that had the battery there had a little screw to undo. I did not have a screwdriver with me, but I had just gotten a pocket knife that didn't have a screwdriver but still had the knife. And so I'm sitting there, I'm probably 8, 10, with a knife, trying to open up a Phillips head screw. And my grandfather and my uncle both look at me and say, "What are you doing?" And Uncle Earl pulls out his multi-tool and says, "You need the proper tool for the proper job." Hands me a Phillips screwdriver, and then I played with the toy until it was my turn to open a gift. You need the proper tool for the proper job. Today we celebrate our patronal feast, the feast of St. Paul, the conversion of St. Paul, we moved it a little bit, but that is what we're celebrating today. That's why our readings are recountings, Paul's recounting in Acts and then also in Galatians of his conversion, of the light that shone on his road to Damascus, of Jesus' vision to him and his setting him aside to be his chosen instrument, his chosen tool to go to the Gentiles. God, in his wisdom, had picked the right tool for the right job. But you might have caught in our Acts reading in Galatians, and if you know the story, that not everybody agreed with God when he chose Saul to become Paul, to be this wonderful evangelist, apostle, writer of most of the New Testament. Because as Paul notes, and as the book of Acts recounts, he had been persecuting the church. Just a few chapters before this Damascus road, he is sitting watching as they stone Stephen, the first martyr by death. He's sitting there watching the cloaks, keeping guard over the cloaks of those who have picked up stones to kill Stephen for his witness to Jesus as Lord. And Saul, being zealous for the faith of the Jews, as he says, gets orders from the Sanhedrin, from the ruling council, to go not just in Jerusalem, but to out all over the place. And he is persecuting the church, getting them, throwing them in prison, killing them if he can. This is God's chosen instrument to proclaim the good news of Jesus to all nations, to go beyond the Jewish nation and out into the Greek and Roman world, and to bring all into God's family. Seems like he could have picked somebody else. Maybe somebody who wasn't so scary. Maybe somebody who didn't have quite so bad a track record. Maybe you could have picked someone who just got along better with people. If you read the rest of Acts, Paul has quite the temper. Likes to argue. If you read through his epistles, you can read between the lines that often he's not quite happy with the people he's writing to. Seems like there should have been someone better. maybe Peter or John, or Jesus' own brother, James. But that was not the wisdom of God. Instead, he chose Paul. Paul. He chose one who had been persecuting and hurting the believers to then go and preach the good news to all. Who else could have done this but God? The right tool for the right job. We celebrate this not only as our patronal feast, since Paul is on our door, but we celebrate here the wisdom of God, that he works in ways unexpected, and that when there is a task appointed to be done, he gets the right tool. And not only does he pick the right tool, he picks the right instrument, the chosen instrument that shows forth his glory and his power. God picks those who it will make clear that only God could have done this. In our own lives, we find ourselves often set with tasks and we have no idea how we will accomplish them. The Lord sets things that we need to do, people we need to love, rights we need to wrong, forgiveness we need to offer. And he says, you do it. And quite often, at least my thought is, oh, you've got the wrong guy. Surely someone else would be a better fit. Surely someone else is more capable, more confident, more wise, more loving, more caring. Send someone else. But in those moments, God shows me these examples of St. Paul, of Elijah, of Isaiah, of Abraham. And he says, my power is made perfect in your weakness, and I have chosen the right instrument for the right job, not because you are fitted right yourself, but because by my grace I will give you what you need to accomplish what must be done. Like Paul, we might look at that which God puts before us and say, oh no, I am the worst of sinners. I was persecuting you. I don't like church. I don't like that person. I can't love them. I can't forgive them. Perhaps we find ourselves thinking, God, you are wrong. But today we look then at the example of Paul and then God's choosing of his instrument. And we remember that God's wisdom is perfect. And when he calls us to a task, he will equip us to do that task. Though that sometimes takes a while to realize, as my own process and ordination revealed, several years of saying, no, I don't think so, God. And then finally 2+ years of preparation and training and being fitted. So, today we remember the conversion of Paul, God's chosen instrument to preach to the Gentiles and all the nations. And we remember that he, according to our wisdom, doesn't look quite right. But that God's grace fitted him and made him into the person that he needed to be, that God needed him to be. And so we might look around and see something that we must do and have no idea how we might accomplish it. In that time, turn to God. Ask that the Spirit might move in us to equip us and make us able to do those things that God has set before us to do. And then, down the line, we'll look back and say, oh, I was not the right instrument. I was a knife trying to open a Phillips head screw. But God's grace made me into what he needed me to be. And all to his praise and glory throughout all ages. Amen.